Peru, a land of ancient mysteries and majestic landscapes, has often been the stage for unexplained phenomena. One of the most famous and well-documented UFO encounters in this country occurred on the clear day of February 3, 1972. This incident, witnessed by two men, left an indelible mark on their memories and added another chapter to the annals of Peruvian ufology. It all began early, during the still cool morning in Pacalillo, a small town lost in the harsh desert approximately 500 kilometers, 300 miles, south of the bustling capital, Lima. For Tito Rolls and his friend and business partner, Adolfo Penafiel, it was a typical workday. They owned a small shop that delivered groceries and essential goods to remote settlements and farms. Today, they had a trip planned to Nazca, located about 50 kilometers, 30 miles, to the north. Before the scorching February sun, in the southern hemisphere, February is the height of summer, climbed too high in the cloudless, piercingly blue sky. The men carefully loaded Tito's weather-beaten pickup truck with crates of provisions. Exchanging jokes and checking the cargo lashings, they set off. The road ahead was familiar, the famous Pan-American Highway, cutting like a ribbon through the desert landscape. With the windows of the old truck rolled down in a futile hope of catching even the slightest breeze drifting from the distant Pacific Ocean, Tito and Adolfo drove north at a leisurely pace. On both sides of the road stretched a monotonous, almost Martian landscape, sun-scorched brown rocky cliffs and sand dunes merging on the horizon with the imposing, jagged silhouettes of the Cordilleras rising to their right. The desert seemed lifeless and endless. As they were crossing a particularly desolate stretch known as the Pampa Carbonera, south of Nazca, the truck's radio, tuned to a popular station from Arequipa, began to act strangely. The lively Latin music that had been cheerfully pouring from the speaker started to break up, fading in and out amidst growing interference. Then, the melody was replaced by harsh hissing and crackling. Finally, the radio simply fell silent, leaving only the drone of the old engine and the whistle of the wind in the cabin. "Not this again," Tito grumbled, irritably banging the dashboard with his right fist. The radio had acted up before, but it usually fixed itself. "Maybe it's the antenna? Loose somewhere," Adolfo suggested, gazing out at the monotonous landscape. He hadn't finished speaking when the pickup's engine began to fail. It sputtered, coughed, and power dropped sharply. The truck lurched a couple of times, the engine knocking as if running on only a couple of cylinders. "Now what?" Tito cursed, instinctively pressing the gas pedal to the floor. But it didn't help. The engine continued to choke, losing revs, and the truck rapidly slowed down. Realizing they couldn't go any further, Tito pulled over onto the dusty shoulder of the highway, raising a cloud of sand. He turned the key in the ignition several times, trying to restart the engine. It turned over sluggishly a couple of times, let out a final pitiful groan, and died completely. An oppressive silence fell in the cabin, broken only by the distant howl of the wind. "Maybe the fuel filter's clogged," Adolfo suggested, opening the door and stepping out of the scorching hot cabin. The desert heat immediately enveloped him. "I don't think so. More likely something electrical. The battery's dead," Tito replied grimly, also getting out. "The radio's not working. The lights are out too. I checked. I hope it's just a bad connection somewhere." "Why do you say that?" Adolfo asked, squinting against the bright sun. "Because if we need water, we have enough," Tito said, retrieving a large leather water skin from the cabin. "But if the battery or the alternator died, it could take all day, maybe all night, before someone drives by and helps. We can't do much ourselves out here." Sighing heavily, Tito lifted the hood of the pickup, releasing a wave of hot air smelling of oil. He habitually licked his thumb and forefinger and quickly touched them to the battery terminals to check for charge. In the same instant, he sharply jerked his hand back and cried out in pain, shaking his fingers vigorously. "Oh damn. Ow," he hissed, looking at his reddened fingertips. "There's power here all right. Too much, even. Some kind of strange charge, strong." The battery was clearly charged, perhaps even overcharged. At that moment, Adolfo, who had been distractedly looking towards the broken line of the coastal range, froze and suddenly shouted, pointing a finger into the desert. "Tito, look over there." "Look at what?" Tito responded irritably, still blowing on his burned fingers. "Another pile of rocks. There, On the pampa, Adolfo's voice trembled with excitement. He was looking against the bright morning sun, shielding his eyes with his hand. I think there's some kind of vehicle. A vehicle? Out there. Tito turned disbelievingly in the indicated direction. You're imagining things, Adolfo. There's no road there. How could a vehicle get there? Have you got heat stroke or something? His words died in his throat. He froze, his eyes wide. He saw it too. About 100 meters from the highway, amidst the small sand dunes, a bright silvery object sparkled. It didn't resemble any known vehicle. The light reflecting off, it was almost blinding. Shielding his eyes with his hand, Tito whispered, "You're right. There really is something there. But what the hell is it? Let's go find out," Adolfo said decisively, and, without waiting for an answer, started down the sandy embankment of the highway, causing a small slide of sand and fine pebbles. Tito hesitated for a second, then followed him. The two dealers walked across the scorching desert, their feet sinking into the sand. As they approached the mysterious object, the blinding glare became almost unbearable. Sunlight reflected off the perfectly smooth, mirror-like surface of the metallic disc, forcing the men to constantly squint. The air around the object seemed still and thick. Adolfo's heart pounded wildly in his chest from a mixture of fear and excitement. He recognized the shape he had seen in magazine pictures. "Caramba," he breathed out. "It's a flying saucer." There was no doubt. Before them was a classic daylight disc, as ufologists called them. The object rested on three supports, resembling retractable landing gear. Its perfectly smooth surface showed no windows, portholes, doors, or any identifying marks or signal lights. Later, estimating its size by eye, they concluded the craft was approximately 15 meters, 50 feet, long and about 4 meters, 13 feet, high at its thickest point. Its metallic skin was so polished that they could clearly see their own distorted reflections and the blue sky above in it, like a mirror. A barely perceptible low hum emanated from the object. And at that moment, to their utter astonishment, from behind the front of the saucer, rounding it, appeared an occupant of this strange craft. Adolfo later described it as a person of very short stature, dressed in a tight-fitting green suit, over which was worn a transparent spacesuit or helmet that completely concealed the head. The being moved somewhat awkwardly, but purposefully, examining the ground and rocks around the ship, as if searching for something or collecting samples. Upon seeing the living creature, Tito and Adolfo, forgetting their fear, started running straight towards the saucer without consulting each other. They were seized by an incredible curiosity and a desire to greet the strange visitor, as they later explained. They waved their arms and shouted something, trying to attract attention, but their appearance was clearly not part of the aliens' plans. Noticing the men running towards it, the being abruptly stopped its pamper inspection, turned, and quickly, almost gliding over the sand, returned to its ship. It disappeared behind its hull as suddenly as it had appeared. The men hadn't even covered half the distance. Only a few seconds passed before a piercing, screeching metallic sound erupted, making Tito and Adolfo's ears ring. This sound, as some locals later claimed, was familiar to those living near Nazca. It was sometimes heard coming from the desert plateaus, fueling rumors that the Pampa might serve as a landing site for extraterrestrials. The silvery disc smoothly lifted off the ground, retracting its supports. It rose into the air at an incredibly steep, almost vertical angle, accelerating with astonishing speed. No smoke, no fire, no visible exhaust, just that deafening screech and the rapid upward movement. Tito and Adolfo froze in place, heads tilted back, watching as the saucer turned into a glittering dot against the flawlessly blue sky, and then instantly vanished from sight, as if dissolving into the air. The screeching stopped, and primordial silence returned to the desert. For several minutes, the men stood silently, stunned by what they had seen, trying to process what had happened. Then, still disbelieving their eyes, they slowly trudged back towards their helpless truck parked on the highway shoulder. Arriving at the vehicle, Tito, out of some inexplicable habit, got behind the wheel, put the key in the ignition, pressed the gas pedal, and turned the key. To his immense surprise, the engine instantly roared to life, running smoothly and powerfully, as if nothing had happened. Simultaneously, clear and loud music from the Arequipa station poured from the radio.